When he was asked if KD is now better than LeBron, here's what he had to say. KD can score better than LeBron, probably always has been able to, but has he surpassed LeBron? Nah. He tried to beat the Milwaukee Bucks instead of utilizing his team. LeBron James would have figured out how to beat them, and he wouldn't have been exhausted, and he may not have taken the last shot. But LeBron ain't KD, and KD ain't LeBron. KD's a shooter, a scorer, but he doesn't have what LeBron has. So you all know, KD's got rabbit ears, he's quick to clap back, and he doesn't hold back, posting this response on Twitter. Didn't the great Scottie Pippen refuse to go in the game for the last second shot because he was in his feelings? His coach drew up the play for a better shooter. This guy, Scott, also wanted to enjoy his summer, so he chose to rehab during the season. Laugh out loud. Yo, Scottie Pippen, they followed Phil, not you. Stephen A., what do you think of KD's response?
I thought it was unnecessary. He's not wrong, though. What he pointed out about Scottie Pippen was accurate. He did. I mean, those things are true. He didn't lie, but it was just unnecessary. Scottie Pippen basically said you're a scorer and a shooter. You know, you don't have what LeBron has because LeBron is more the distributor of the basketball, et cetera, et cetera. Scottie Pippen's not being phony in his analysis because that's essentially what Scottie Pippen was to a lesser degree. Scottie Pippen was somebody that even though he could score, obviously he had MJ, he was a bit deferential. Scottie Pippen was somebody that was an elite defender. He's a 6-time champion. Michael Jordan acknowledges he couldn't have done that without Scottie Pippen. And KD is a person that religiously preaches about playing the right way, going to a place where you know how to play basketball the right way. And no one, absolutely no one, would accuse Scottie Pippen of playing the wrong way because we all know that he's a 6-time champion. And we know how elite he was on a multitude of levels. He just wasn't the scorer that Michael Jordan was, which nobody has been as far as I'm concerned. KD might be that guy. But in the end, I'm just looking at KD. KD didn't lie about Scottie Pippen. And I know that. But I'm like, this is a 6-time champion. Breaking down basketball. Did what he say is incorrect about KD? Are you not a scorer? Not that you can't pass, not that you can't distribute, not that you can't lead when called upon. I personally believe the only reason you lost this series to Milwaukee is because Kyrie got hurt and you were absolutely exhausted because you had to do everything by yourself. We all know that about KD. Just watch the games, and you know that. But I just felt like it was a bit unnecessary to come at Scottie Pippen like that because he gave basketball analysis, something he's incredibly qualified to do. And the only reason in my mind why KD would feel compelled to come at him like that is because KD had a problem with him saying you're not LeBron, which is a different discussion.
Yeah, I mean, Scottie Pippen's in the media, and his opinion is solicited by people. KD just clapped back at Scottie Pippen. It felt much more personal, whereas Scottie Pippen was just giving you basketball analysis. But I'm not mad at KD. That's who KD is. We know that already. He does have rabbit ears. And there's something, you know, he went at Jay Will recently. And Stephen A., Jay Will has talked so glowingly of KD like behind closed doors, you know, like he just thinks that much of him as a player. And put me up on something. He said something to me that sparked this thought, where everyone's sort of on KD because he claps back, even on social media. Some anonymous fan like, KD, what are you doing? But it says something about KD that he doesn't care who it is, whether it's Scottie Pippen or some anonymous fan.
Joe Schmo.
Yeah. He actually, in a way, it's that it feels like, well, he's actually respectful of everybody because he values everyone's opinion. Now, maybe too much. Maybe he does have rabbit ears, right? Like, why are you so sensitive? He actually does care what people think. And Stephen A., he doesn't, like, if that's who he is, that's who he is. I agree with Scottie Pippen's point that LeBron is better than KD because he elevates people around him. But I don't agree with his point that KD doesn't elevate people around him. LeBron does it even better. But I don't see KD as, I'm going to try and beat this team by myself. When he had one dude with him in Kyrie, he was whooping him. It was like they should have called a mercy rule after 2 games almost. when he had no one with him, when James Harden couldn't move, couldn't shoot, couldn't defend, couldn't get out in transition, when he had no one with him, of course they beat him. But even then, he played so well, he gave his a team a chance to win. I see KD as a very much a team player. So I don't agree with Scottie like, oh, he's just trying to beat that team by himself. He does what's called for. KD will do what his team needs. But I do think it's valid to say LeBron's greatness, while he can't score like KD, is he's better in other areas, elevating people. Because Stephen A., who's ever been as good at elevating teammates as LeBron? He might be the best ever at that.
Well, so says you. I don't necessarily always agree with that. As a matter of fact, Kyrie wanted to leave. Yeah, they won a championship in Cleveland, but in terms of Kyrie's personal growth as a player and showcasing his talent, he didn't believe the ideal spot was for him to play with LeBron James. But that's a different debate for another day. The issue for me is not that KD claps back. He has every right to clap back. I have no problem with that. My problem is the kind of things that he says. It's like if years ago when Charles Barkley was given basketball analysis about LeBron James, and he went up, he said, I mean, damn, what do you want, everything? I mean, what happened to wanting to compete? In other words, instead of joining forces, going against them. So he said the words, do you not want to compete and what have you? And then LeBron used that as an excuse to bring up, throwing somebody through a plate glass window or, gambling debts and all of this other stuff. Charles Barkley was giving basketball analysis. All of a sudden, LeBron got personal on a very classless level as far as I'm concerned. KD, it's not that he clapped back. It's that what does what you had to say about Scottie Pippen have to do with what Scottie Pippen was saying about your from a basketball analysis perspective, about your game compared to LeBron James? Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.